Hey, what's going on? Got another bag of records here. This time they're coming from the Outer Limits, it was my comic book store when I was growing up. It was my local comic book store. It's in Waltham, Massachusetts, and I lived not too far from there growing up. And that's where I used to get my comic books, and he's still in business. He's a great guy. Steve is his name. But anyway, so he sells all kinds of stuff these days. He's got all kinds of toys and records and stuff, and so I love going through his records. He's always got some good stuff and reasonably priced as well. So let's see what I got. All right, first off, we have Rush, Exit Stage Left, which was released in October of 1981. It is their second live album, and I think their 9th overall. Now this one, what a great album. I mean, excellent live album. I mean, the tunes are just insane. Spirit of Radio, Red Barchetta, YYZ to start it off. Closer to the Heart, Tom Sawyer. I mean, all their big hits. And with great versions of them, too. Now, the artwork on this one is really interesting and really cool. It references, actually, all of their previous albums. We've got the Snowy Owl from Fly By Night. This guy and this guy were both in Hemispheres. She was on the cover of Permanent Waves. Farewell to Kings, the Puppet Master. That logo right there was what their logo looked like on their first album. This painting was from Caress of Steel. Being Moved by the Movers from Moving Pictures. And then from 2112, The Starman. It even references their first live album, All the World's a Stage, which is where this picture's from. But excellent album, great artwork. And oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention about Exit Stage Left is, do you know Snagglepuss from the old cartoons? One of his lines was always exit stage left or exit stage right or whatever. But this actually is a reference to Snagglepuss. And they tried to get his tail, like his little pink tail, coming out onto the album somewhere. But Warner Brothers or whoever owned it wanted way too much money. And there was a whole bunch of legal mumbo jumbo that they were going to have to go through just to add the pink tail. So they didn't even add it. But that was supposed to be referenced in this. Next up, Dave Brubeck's Greatest Hits and Time Changes. I'm a huge fan of Dave Brubeck. Really the pioneer of cool jazz. Really interesting stuff. This one was released in 1964, this one in 1966. He had very interesting time signature, rhythms, polyrhythms. His biggest hit that everyone should be familiar with is Take 5, but he's got tons of great stuff. Stray Cats, Built for Speed. This was their debut album. It reached number 2 on the charts. It was actually their first US album. They actually did have albums out in Europe prior to this one. This one did eventually go platinum. It was released in June 1982. Big hits on this one, Rock This Town and Stray Cat Strut. Now, the rest of the stuff is good. It's good. It's good. It's exactly what you expect it to be. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this one. I probably will, because I really do enjoy the songs I know on it. But I found myself not making it all the way through both sides. It seemed very samey to me, but really good stuff. But like I said, Rock This Town, Built for Speed, Stray Cat Strut, Runaway Boys. A lot of great tunes on this. Metallica, Master of Puppets. What many believe to be their greatest album. In my opinion, it's Injustice for All, but Master is still amazing. What an amazing album. What can I even say about it? This happens to be this was released in March 1986 originally, but this particularly is a remaster or a reissue from 2015. Went 6 times platinum. And I mean, it really is. What a great metal album. What a great metal album cover, too, right? It does have my favorite Metallica song, though, Orion. That is so cool. Next up, we got the Pretenders 2. This was released August of 1981. Went to number 10. It went gold. Now, this one has Message of Love is the jam that I knew on this prior to it. When I threw it on, the first 2 tracks I really wasn't crazy about, but then it started getting really good, and it finished strong, and side 2 was pretty good too. I don't know if it's the one that I'm going to listen to a ton, but a lot of great jams. I do find the Pretenders to be very underrated. Very underrated band. I don't think they get nearly as enough credit for the great rock that they were, the sort of new wavy rock that they were doing in the early 80s. The Mothers of Invention, Weasels Ripped My Flesh. This was Frank Zappa's band. There he is. There's Frank the Tank. I like Zappa a lot. I like a lot of his stuff, but some of his stuff is just too much for me. When it gets too avant-garde, when it gets a little too free jazz, it gets to be too much for me. And a lot of the stuff on here is like that. It's like half live, I think. Or mostly live, I don't know. Came out in 1970. There's a few good tracks that I listen to, but for the most part, it's, like I said, a little bit too much for me.
Good night, boys and girls.
And Heaven and Hell, Black Sabbath. This was the first Sabbath album with Ronnie James Dio. And I was never into this growing up. My impression of Sabbath was it always needs to be Ozzy's band and nobody else would do right. And sure enough, I mean, this album sounds a lot different than the Ozzy era Sabbath. It went platinum. It was released in 1980. It was Sabbath's 9th album. Big departure. Geezer Butler used to be the lyric writer, but when Ronnie James Dio came in, he took over the lyric writing duties. And if you know anything about Dio, he is quite a poet in his metal ways. But great, a lot of great tunes on this, great riffs. It's not like old Sabbath, but I've really grown to appreciate this as I've grown up. So definitely dig this a lot. Psyched to have it. Not in the best shape, but sounds pretty good.